Welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. I'm your host, Tom Horrox, and today I am joined by Grid Talk host Owain Medford,
Hello.
Grid Talk royalty and F1 Chronicle writer Alex Booth,
Hello.
and F1 writer and podcaster Jawad Yaqub.
Hi, everyone.
And before we get into this most recent episode, we must thank our sponsor, Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all sports and betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are still being played. When the game's over, head on to our online casino and get a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind with one of our 150 plus slot games. And head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit over $250. Bet Online, where the game starts. Okay, so we're going to get straight into things here with a return to the wins here for Lewis Hamilton, seeing the flag first for the first time. This has happened since the penultimate race of 21 in Jeddah. Hugely emotional day, as I already said, outright record holder now for most wins at a single track. I'm going to go straight to you. How big is this moment for him and his legacy?
I mean, it's probably worth the wait. I think a lot of people over the last 2.5 years, particularly, prior to that point, he hadn't not won a race in a single season in any season up to that point, which is something like what was it? It was like 14 years with a win on the bounce. And then obviously the car was not great, and then obviously you get the sort of the people saying that you can only do it in a top car and things like that. And the Mercedes is, it's still fairly good. It's a lot better than it was. But I think it's worth the wait. Obviously he's come close a couple of times, but for whatever reason, he's either been hunted down or things like that. But of all places to do it as well, it's the best. It's got to feel the best to do it in front of a home crowd with. I mean, you heard the support. I mean, I know that F1 seems to turn up the crowd noise a little bit more. But in a car that wasn't necessarily the fastest, and after a few years back, and he himself was sort of unnerved by didn't have the confidence basically. Wasn't so confident that he still had it. Comes along, and we've seen glimpses of it, but he came along and absolutely managed that race brilliantly, and takes, as you say, a record 9th win. In front of a home crowd, and I don't think there's any better way to do it. You couldn't write that sort of thing.
No, it's an incredible achievement, and YouTube viewers will notice that I just toasted Lewis Hamilton's success with a nice cold Italian beer ready for next season. Other brands are available, of course, but we're going to go on to the actual race itself now, Alex. And as another one of our partisan countrymen on the podcast today, I'll give you Lewis Hamilton to talk about his race. It was a fairly slow start following his teammate in the opening stint, but his race seemed to come alive with a little bit of water on the track. What do you put his superior race pace down to? Was it situational, or is he back to his best?
I think he seemed to come alive when the rain hit, as Russell seemed to have it pretty well under control in the opening stages, as it looked like they were playing the long game. But then the weather obviously played a part. Lewis got the good toe, got the good momentum out of the Maggotts and Beckett complex, and managed to get him. It nearly went awry straight away, because as the rain fell, they all went skating off at the first corner, and I thought, oh well, are they going to be able to hang on? Then it looked like Lando Norris might have got the better hand, but a slow pit stop for McLaren and a rather questionable tyre choice, in my opinion. It was a great open door for Lewis to take, and it's not his first rodeo, is it? With the victory in sight, he was able to control it, and he hung on, and it's a fantastic story in his final season for Mercedes to get a win, as Owen's just mentioned. What better place to do it? And as you saw, it was the perfect result for the crowd. The place went bananas, and it was a drive worthy of a multiple world champion, which as we know, Lewis is.
Yeah, obviously, again, YouTube listeners or viewers will notice the color of the shirt that I'm wearing would make you think that potentially I'm a bit disappointed that it wasn't Lando Norris who came home in first in this race. And I was sitting there and I literally turned over to the people I was watching with and I just said, I am so torn. I have no idea which way I want this to go. Would have been amazing for Lando to get his first win, but as it was, if it had been ahead of Lewis, I think Max would have come through to win the race. So, yeah, overall, fantastic result and great for Formula One as well. It's good to have Lewis back up there, but we'll try and get away with this biased British media. We'll try and get away from talking about the British drivers now and hand to you, Jawad. You get there couldn't be a more different story on the other side of the garage for George Russell retiring out of nowhere. It seemed that water had the opposite effect on his race that it had on his teammate. He's only 1 point ahead of Lewis now in the championship, which seems insane given how much better he's been in qualifying. Was he in with a shout of winning this race without the issue, or was it always going to be going Hamilton's way?
It's really difficult to say, but we know Lewis, he grows an extra leg around this place and he's a 9-time winner now. But, for George to be leading in the early parts of the race, to get the start right from pole position as well, we know how intense that opening, I guess, first couple of sectors it is at this track. On the run up to Copse Corner, as we saw a few years ago. So yeah, to lead that, to be in front and then kind of be in charge of the opening stint until the rain came down. George was looking pretty good, but then, just as the conditions changed, I think, the race as well kind of went over to the likes of the McLarens and also Lewis Hamilton, but who knows what would have happened if he did make it past lap 34, of course, when he did peel into the pits and then was forced to retire with a suspected water issue. I seriously thought he had come in for an early pit stop in that stint and was like, why is he not moving? And then next thing you know, you see him being wheeled into the garage, and it was just like, oh wow. And it's so tricky, or it's so difficult to see Mercedes cars being unreliable because we're so used to them being reliable cars from back in the day when they won 8 constructors championships in a row. So, they've not had the greatest of reliability in this new ground effect era. And, the fact that they've seemingly turned a corner this year, they've won 2 races in a row as well, which is excellent to see for them and for their fans. But yeah, Russell will be gutted that even if he couldn't have won the race today, at least being with a shout for a Mercedes 1-2, I think that would have been pretty special, and British 1-2 as well for all the fans out there.
Yeah, and as well as like you say about the reliability as well, it always seems to be Russell. It's last season especially, we saw him have terrible reliability compared to his teammate, and he must be wondering what he's got to do to catch a break. At least he's finally got a pole position at his home Grand Prix, so he's experienced the crowd adulation from that side of things. But you got to feel for him. But yeah, I think potentially a 1-2 would have been the best he could have hoped for there. I think Lewis probably just had a bit more than he did with tyre life and race pace and everything. But moving on to an unlikely second place, Owain, in Max Verstappen, and it's not very long ago we would have think that would have been insane to say that. I mean, the first few laps aside, at no point he really seemed like he had the pace of the leaders and was looking like 5th place was going to be his maximum. And so how then were all the British fans biting their nails until the flag with him charging in second and looking like he could win it?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that obviously Red Bull on the medium, just with full fuel tanks and stuff and things like that, just did not have the pace. I mean, and to be fair, they've been a bit off kilter, I think I would say, all weekend. Obviously, we saw Verstappen have an issue, an uncharacteristic issue, really, to go off in qualifying. I know he's pushing the limit, and I know it was sort of mixed conditions and things like that, but it was just it was uncharacteristic. It just wasn't like it. Wasn't like him really. So that obviously damaged the underfloor of his car, which seemed to stop him in qualifying. That's why he only started in 4th. And as you say, off the line he started well, but unfortunately that day in the first stint just really didn't seem to help him. I think what really helped was the fact that Verstappen had they had a guinea pig, really. I mean, you could say that was a chance to call from Red Bull to see if they could get Perez further up the order. But what it did do was help Verstappen know exactly when that they couldn't go onto the soft tires, onto the inter tires as early as they wanted to in that first rain cell. He was able to keep it on the road, during that time and seemed to be sort of fairly okay. But as it dried up, went away from the McLaren, and then when I think maybe it must have been a case of the Red Bull using its tires more, bearing in mind that once it came to the last stint where they put on the hards, that was clearly the only option for them. I don't think they could have made the softs work in the same way that the Mercedes and the McLaren did, despite obviously Norris being overtaken. I think they had to go onto the hards, and that really worked for them. I mean, I think it was pushed close, and I think Hamilton maybe had the benefit of not being chased down by Verstappen immediately, so he could bring his tyres in a bit better, a bit more slowly. But obviously, the Verstappen to champion, he thrives in these conditions, and they just kind of made the right calls when they could, with a bit of extra data from Perez there, and obviously, Max Verstappen is a great racer, and he knows he knows now not to throw it off the track. And that's how he secured that second place.
Yeah, I think very very difficult situation there. Red Bull found themselves in, and as it turns out, that potentially what could have been conceived as a disadvantage gave them a real shot at the win, and probably got them second place as well. But we're going to now talk about the other side of the garage again, and Alex and Perez, starting from the pits, never seemed like he was going to feature in the race. He was so far back that when Russell was walking out the back of the garage, he still had a healthy gap to the Red Bull. Was this really as bad as it looked, or was this him being fairly unfairly treated by his team, being a bit of a sacrificial lamb for the entire race? He never had a favourable strategy.
Well, yeah, one could argue that he could have been very well testing the track for Max, but at the same time, when he was down that far down, it could have been a gamble that might have paid off. Had the rain fallen, Perez would have found himself way up in the points, and that would have worked out for him. In the end, it turned out not to be. The rain didn't come, and he ended up being stuck on the intermediate tyres. So, because the rain never actually came with the intensity that they predicted, and the track was still dry, the tyres just quickly burned out, and it was a sitting duck really. And along with Charles Leclerc as well, who made the same gamble. But for Perez, it's a very difficult one for me to talk about because viewers of Grid Talk will know that I'm one of his biggest fans and always have been, and it's difficult to see him in this situation. But it's been going on for so long. It's ever since he's not really had. It's pretty much since midway through last year. You could argue he's not really found it. It's not really delivered, and looked like in Suzuka this year he might have regained his form, but that was really just a flash in the pan. And now there's rumours of a potential seat swap with, well, not necessarily a sweep swap, but Daniel Ricciardo taking his place. Which, I mean, I apologise in advance to Jawad for the Australian fans, but I think Red Bull are absolutely bonkers if they do that. In all honesty. But nonetheless, it doesn't change the fact that Sergio's not delivering, and another very difficult weekend, not helped by his own error in qualifying, which left him starting in the pit lane in the first place, and just trundling around and eventually finishing 2 laps down. It's Red Bull. I mean, although Max has got a healthy lead in the Drivers' Championship, the Constructors' Championship is certainly looking a little bit like squeaky bum time for Red Bull, and they need a second car up there, and at the moment they haven't got it. So we'll wait and see what happens at the summer break. After the summer break, I know we've got Hungary left coming up, but then after that we've got 4 weeks, and he's got time to recharge, and we'll see. Maybe the old Checo that looked so strong in the early part of 2022 may come to the top, but it's looking like a very remote possibility.
Yeah, and I would just like to defend myself there and say that I absolutely gave you an opportunity to defend him there. And I, for one, don't think that he had a particularly bad race today. I think with the lot that he was given, he did as well as anyone could have done. He looked like he was making those tyres work well, whilst at the same time, the hard tyres at the start, I mean, giving some great information to Red Bull, which meant that they knew they could put Max on the hards at the end, and it would still work as a tyre. So I think he was definitely being used as a guinea pig, and I think Red Bull have done him over dirty today. But had he not put it in a kitty litter in Q1, that probably wouldn't have been a problem. So I guess you manifest your own destiny in the end there. So we're going to move on then to Lando Norris, Jawad. And for a long time in mixed conditions, it looked like he was the class of the field. How then in the end was he a distant third?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to use Mr. Tom Downey's words, famous words, is they basically bottled it. Lando bottled it. So did McLaren with their call. If you want to talk about the second pit stop at the end, which ultimately did see the lead transition over to Lewis, Lando came in and overshot his mark in the pit, which isn't always ideal when you're doing a pit stop. You've got to be on your marks for everything to kind of line up properly, and that's how you get those awesome sub 2 second stops. But it was like 4.7 seconds, and then even in the build up to that stop, and this is the thing that if you cast your mind back to Russia 21, when he could have potentially had his first win there, where the team kind of left it in his hands or asked him, what would you prefer tire wise? What are you trying to gain information from the driver, and the driver isn't 100% sure either. This is where the lack of experience, I guess, from a team as well, who haven't won as many races or been at the sharp end of the grid for a long time, as well as a driver who's still, I guess, learning to be in that race winning position regularly to actually make those calls and make them just be a lot more decisive. So the way that Norris on the radio couldn't make up his mind whether it was either match Lewis on the soft tires or take on a fresh set of mediums or whatever. He was thinking more about, if I go on softs, I'll match Lewis, and thinking about where Lewis was, rather than hang on, mediums, the long game, it might come back to me. And that's what we saw with Verstappen on the hard tyres, ended up coming back and taking second. And then Lando's teammate Piastri on the medium tyres was how many seconds per lap quicker at the end. So, I don't want to say I feel sorry for Norris. And yes, I'm a big McLaren fan as well. I don't like it when he beats himself up in the press afterwards. If you heard his interview with Sky, he was rather really, really self-critical, to the point where it was like, I mean, we want to feel sorry for you, but this is the sort of stuff you don't need to air in the public, talk about in private with your team and your debrief, and then come back stronger for the next race. And, I could go on for ages talking about how we've just finished this triple header and they could have won all three of the races that we had. They could have won the last 4 races if we want to go back to Canada. So it's very painful sitting here thinking what a missed opportunity these last 4 races have been for McLaren and for Norris. And I guess, yes, inexperience is one thing, but again, they've got to learn and come back stronger for the next one. And that's what I hoped after Canada and then Barcelona, Austria, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a tricky one. There is as much of the team to blame for what had happened with him today, but also Norris has some blame to take. But otherwise, encouraging to see where they were in the middle of the race leading. He was able to pick off the Mercedes in those tricky conditions early on as well. And it was looking all rosy when it was a McLaren one too, but then they kind of shot themselves in the foot with the decisions they made, and also Norris as well, just not being decisive enough. I think this is where the team need to take that control and, be the ones making the calls. You see it with, Mercedes and with Red Bull, and that's why they are multiple race winners in the modern F1 era. They're Constructors' Championship winners as well. So yeah, still a lot to do for McLaren to get to that stage, and it's not going to happen just by having the fastest car.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I definitely did not enjoy that element of the race, and it was not a 5-star performance from McLaren at all. And if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take a few minutes to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe, and be sure to follow us on our social channels at Grid Talk UK to stay up to date with the show. But we are going to stay with McLaren for a little bit longer and just put ourselves through a little bit more pain, Owain. And as Jawad so eloquently put it a few minutes ago, Piastri, just McLaren in general, Piastri again was in a strong position, but staying out that extra lap cost him massively. McLaren famously lost that race in 2021 Sochi with a bad tactics and with the weather. There's been several instances this year where they just could have won races with different tactics, and it's started to become a problem. What do you think? Is this a problem for McLaren, or is it just a case of a team that has forgotten how to win, just taking a bit more time to get back up to speed?
I think that it's a case of the sport. It's basically a third option. I think it's a case of the sport being down to the fine margins. You have to have people thinking about the fact that they needed to double stack. The rain was looking like it was going to come in like that. But obviously, I think they were worried about incurring a penalty from backing up the pack, and just not really looking at the bigger picture of the fact that taking the short term sort of time penalty of a couple of seconds having to wait, and doing that double stack would have actually stood them in good stead and kept them with two drivers at the front of the field, or at least close to it. I mean, he wasn't going to lose a huge amount. I think those top six cars at the time were walking away from the rest of the field, and even so, if the rest of the field was on a gradually sort of moistening track. Sorry for the word use, but I couldn't think of anything better. I think that the sort of finer margins there, even thinking about the fact that once they're in the pit, the Mercedes is 40 or 50 meters further up the pit lane from them. There's nothing that says in the rules that you have to be at the pit lane speed limiter. So as much as they didn't have to back up, they could have, Piastri could have been slightly slower through the pit lane, not necessarily backing, the people, the other cars up into the pit lane, but backing them up maybe through the pit lane, and they would have got the time that they needed. It's just those little things like that. But that takes cunning, it takes experience, and it just takes the ability to think that way. That I think McLaren have, but actually, coming back to the question you asked, is that maybe it is just that. Maybe they're just not quite used to being, right on the sharp end, and it is those split second, tiny little decisions in the fine margins that get you the wins. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, and unfortunately, Piastri's race suffered for it. I mean, they made it was sort of too little, too late to put on the new medium tires on Piastri's car later on. But that did at least get them further up the field, closer to Norris, but and got them a 3-4. But unfortunately, obviously, the damage had been done earlier in the race. I think, I think, as you say, it's just a case of McLaren not being used to winning races and the kind of decisions you have to make the decisiveness and just living in the little margins that make the Mercedes and the Red Bulls of the world multiple world championship winners.
Yeah, I think it'll take a while. I mean, McLaren haven't won a constructors championship since 1998, but looking at the standings right now, they are 78 points behind Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. So if Lando Norris at 84 points behind Max Verstappen is in the Drivers' Championship, McLaren are definitely in the Constructors' Championship fight at the moment. So that is them and Ferrari both in it still. We could even see Mercedes pull themselves into it if they carry on with these kind of results. But we will talk about Ferrari now. And Alex, I'm going to give you Leclerc. And Ferrari just seems to be returning to their previous strategic blunders. Now, making that tyre choice, my opinion on this, making the tyre choice was one thing. But then to stick with it for 8 laps when he was losing 4 or 5 seconds a sector. And then after those 8 laps came and the rain came, he had to box for new inters because he'd worn them out. It just seemed absolutely insane. Am I being too harsh on them, or a Ferrari back to their old ways?
No, I won't say you've been too harsh. I mean, you're absolutely right. It was a baffling decision to stick with the inters after the gamble clearly hadn't paid off because the rain wasn't coming, as was the case with Checo. Ever since Monaco, when Leclerc took that marvelous home victory, they've not been anywhere. I mean, probably been unlucky to miss out on Q3 yesterday, but even so, the pace isn't really there. I mean, given the rise of Mercedes in recent races, Ferrari have slipped down the pecking order slightly, and Yeah, I mean, the gamble could have, like as was the case with Perez, if the rain turned into a massive downpour, it could have paid off. And I suppose that's the risk you take, and it's like throwing the dice. But it clearly didn't. The rain didn't come, and then to stick with the tires for as long as they did, because by the time the rain finally came, the tires are just going to be like jelly. It's absolutely ridiculous. Um, so Ferrari need to get their act together and quickly. Uh, when you've got after the summer break, we've got Monza coming up. They're definitely not going to want to have a poor strategy call there. Otherwise, the team won't be getting out of the back. They'll have to sneak out the back door probably. Um, yeah, it's not what we want to see, and at the moment we've got a really exciting prospects in Formula One. We've got Red Bull, Mercedes, and McLaren up there at the moment, and it would just be fantastic if we could have a fourth way with Ferrari. And at the moment, they're just not quite there, and it's strategic calls like this that really play a part in that, and it's not good enough, and they need to do better.
Yeah, watch this space, everyone. Next season is going to be epic. I can see this being an incredible season next season. And then bring on the rule changes, and then we have Mercedes being 5 seconds lap quicker than everyone again. So well done, Formula One. Slow clap alert. So we'll move on then to the other side of the garage again. Carlos Sainz had a much better race, Jawad, and he definitely seemed to maximise his day, stealing the fastest lap on the last lap as well, because he had a big gap to Hulkenberg. Could he have done any more with the way that car's performing at the moment? And where do you think he's going to end up next year, especially with these fresh Mercedes rumors coming out, Alpine coming out of nowhere? He seems to all of a sudden be flush with options.
Yeah, we'll get to the silly season stuff later because it seems like that's where all the headlines around Sainz are at the moment, more so than what's going on track, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't think that they could have managed any better in terms of the result today, unless there was circumstances like in Austria where they were able to inherit a podium out of cars ahead of them crashing into each other. So it is just, yeah, Alex talking about Monaco and the win there, or the 1-3 finish. They looked like they were back, and the media were talking about them being in championship contention again, and just seems like it was a bit of a one-trick pony, was Monaco. So they very much seem exposed on these high downforce or high-speed circuits. We know that the Ferrari doesn't really like straights as much as well. So a circuit like Silverstone, which is so demanding on the car and requires a lot of a very strong aero package. Ferrari was going to struggle, but I think for Sainz to have a anonymous race, let's say, today, and just bring home some points with a solid top 5 finish wasn't a bad thing. And then to steal a point as well for fastest lap, not bad considering the other side of the garage didn't score anything. They've obviously got McLaren now breathing down their neck in the Constructors' Championship as well, with 7 points the difference. Wow, that closed up pretty quickly over the last few races. So I think Ferrari are going to have to pull up their socks, like you said earlier, and make better decisions with their strategy as well. And Sainz, he's still a Ferrari driver, even if he's not going to be there next year. He's still one now, so he's going to have to ensure that the team do everything they can to finish ahead of McLaren in the constructors if they can. But on car performance, I doubt that that's going to be the case at all. And as for his future, well, it's, a week ago it seemed like he was a surety to go to Williams, and they were ready to make the announcement and everything, and suddenly this chap called Flavio Briatore comes back into the fold at Enstone and starts stirring the pot around, making promises of getting a Mercedes engine for them and something like that. And apparently if they make that, if Alpine do get a Mercedes engine, that's the only reason Sainz is going to go to there. Or Toto Wolff now offering that Mercedes seat, which he previously didn't say was available to Sainz a few months ago. So I don't know. It's very strange seeing the driver market stall as long as it has, or a driver stall as long as he has to make a decision about his future. I mean, if you were down to just between Williams, Sauber, and Alpine, I know, Tom, you said in the chat the other day that Alpine have a higher ceiling to reach, so there's that option. But then he was there at that team several seasons ago and was cast aside because his performances weren't good enough, and went over to McLaren. You look at Williams, what James Vowles is doing there. They've got Mercedes power as well. Uh, I feel like longer term, they're going to be a good prospect, if you don't really want to put your eggs into the Sauber Audi basket because that's an unknown. So it's really a difficult place that Sainz is in at the moment because, going from a top seat like Ferrari, being able to win races and whatnot to essentially not having that potentially for a few seasons is really tricky. So, I just hope he doesn't do a Fernando Alonso and completely butcher his decision because we all know how Fernando's career has turned out at the moment with decisions he's made in his career. So I'd love for him to personally just go to Audi. I've said it all along that I think he would be a perfect fit there, and he deserves to be at a team where he can kind of lead the development. He's got that great intelligence and intellect to do that. He might not be, the quickest driver on raw pace like a Leclerc or a Hamilton, but he's definitely got the intellect to kind of take a team's development forward. And I'm sure someone like Audi would really benefit from that as they set up. But then again, he might not want to wait 3 or 4 years until they become competitive.
Yeah, I think out of those three options for him, or potentially even four now he's got, or certainly the three that were available for this weekend, none of them are going to be his end game. Apart from potentially Audi, the other two would have only been probably a couple of years to keep himself in the pot and then try and get a bigger drive. Whereas I just think, why wouldn't you just back yourself, win a couple of races, and then try and manufacture a big move in a year's time? Give yourself that year, then maybe sign for Audi as they come into the sport as a marquee signing. Maybe that kind of job can be done. That 1 year deal for Mercedes might actually be the perfect fit for him. No, I think initially he was offered it as tentatively, but turned it down. And I just think that's yes, it's only going to be for 1 year until Antonelli comes into the sport, but why not? And make the decision now, because Antonelli, I haven't watched the F2 feature race yet, but the sprint race was won by Antonelli. So maybe he's getting it together. You don't want to stall too long or that ship may well sail. So watch the space on Carlos Sainz. The pin is about to be pulled, I think, in the driver market. So that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. So slightly less explosive conversation now. Owain is going to be around the Haas team. A slow start for Hulkenberg after a really epic qualifying, but he seemed to go well in the rain and he ended up finishing where he started and came back, didn't get banned. So that's a good race for Haas.
Yeah, I think it's a great race, actually. I think, as much as I think Hulkenberg was under investigation for leaving the track and gaining advantage, I don't think that came to anything as far as I'm aware. So I genuinely, it's the most positive I've been about Haas. I thought when we were sort of dishing these out that I'd sort of got the duff one, but I think I've had the best run of this. Bearing in mind that, as you say, Hulkenberg had a great qualifying in mixed conditions yesterday, and he seems to carry that through to the race. As you say, slow start, but he still managed to make his way up. We didn't see much of them, such was the battle out front being so exciting. But Hulkenberg, he managed to get within 8 seconds of Sainz, which I think is relatively impressive, and outperformed the people that are sort of rivaling in the championship, being Stroll, Stroll and Alonso in the Aston Martins, the RBs, Tsunoda and Ricciardo, and honestly, he did a great job. I think that you also have to you say obviously that Magnussen didn't get banned. In fact, he did for me again a brilliant job. Didn't get lapped, and starting from 17th place on the grid. I know we shouldn't really be celebrating gaining 5 places, but starting 17th place on the grid and making his way up to 12th. And to be fair, it wasn't a world away from 2 points. Just a slight tweak in the strategy, and maybe he gets double points for Haas. I think it's actually a really it's really great. And in that midfield battle where it's starting to matter, how many on count back where you finish, Having two drivers finishing relatively high up in the top 2/3 of the standings is fairly good, and it's honestly a world away from where they've started. I mean, they're hounding Ferraris and things like that. So the fact that they've managed to to do that performance, I think is really good, and it's the most positive I've been about them in quite a long time. Long may that last. I think maybe it's a case of this new sort of formula that we've gone for. It is close enough that these sorts of things do happen. So yeah, I mean, yeah, for Haas, it's not terrible, and I think they've got a lot of positives to take from this.
Yeah, and Haas just 4 points behind RB now. And it wasn't that long ago we were saying RB could catch Alpine. And now all of a sudden Haas are there looking solid in 17th. They've got a big gap back to Alpine, who just seem to be sorry, when I say Alpine, I meant Aston Martin. Sorry. But yeah, it looks like it's certainly going in the right direction. I think pretty much every Grid Talk panelist, if you'd asked them at the start of the season, who's going to be bottom, we probably all would have said Haas. Maybe the odd Sauber might have popped in there, but I certainly was predicting them to be a distant 10th place. But credit where credit's due. Komatsu said that operationally they could be better, and he's proved that they are. So moving on then to Williams, and it's points for Alex Albon, Alex, and your namesake. I just noticed that. And bringing them slightly closer to Alpine as well. A solid 11th from Logan Sargent on countback means he is now ahead of Bottas on the standings. That went very unnoticed. But that's a big thing. It's a big result for Williams, big result for Logan Sargent. Do you think there's any chance of Logan Sargent adding to his single F1 career point before he gets axed? And how was the performance from Williams in general?
Performance from Williams was a good weekend for them because they've been struggling quite a bit as of late. It nearly went pear-shaped at the start because the Albon got very crossed up and lost a few places and nearly actually went into Sargent. But he came away with 9th place, 2 more points. On his half-home Grand Prix, he races under a Thai flag, but he is one of us, really. So, yeah, so another British driver by birth in the points. And yeah, came away with a good reward for a very hard-working Williams team. In answer to your second question, it was a good, fairly good performance by Logan Sargent. In all fairness, he gets a lot of stick, but it was much better than he normally has been in recent times. Sadly, it's too little, too late. I think his days are very much numbered. Oh, there's a slight possibility he could probably get an extra point to go with that solid one that he scored on home soil last year. If that does remain the only point, at least he got it at the United States Grand Prix. I mean, where else would he have wanted to take it? But the one plus point he can take from this weekend is he was much better than he has been as of late, as I've already said. But Albon, 2 points, always handy for Williams and the current position they're in, and at least they're on the board, unlike the rivals from Switzerland, the Sauber team, who still remain scoreless at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. A very difficult season for Sauber, which is why we're not going to be talking about them today. The last team we're going to talk about today, Jawad, is Aston Martin. And a double points finish could be classed as a decent haul, but Stroll, once again, outclassing his teammate. So was this Alonso's best race ever? Is he claiming that this week?
Yeah, totally. After the antics we saw in Austria, and again, actually on the opening lap, he ended up making contact with Albon, which completely forgot until looking back at the notes after the race. So that's when Hulkenberg ended up going off the track and then came back and I think sent Alonso into Albon at turn 3 there. So, what do you say? Like, you could say, yeah, Aston Martin did a good job. They scored double points. Hats off to Lance Stroll for outperforming his teammate. We've got something nice to say about him for once. But then you could also sit here and be like, well, that's a disappointing result because this is a team that more than 12 months ago were supposed to be the closest competitor to Red Bull. They ended the season last year 4th in the championship, but would have had more wind tunnel testing time than the likes of McLaren and Ferrari as well. I think actually, no, they were 5th because Mercedes were up there as well. So they would have had more wind tunnel test time in the first half of this year. They still haven't made any progress. Every time they update the car, it seems to go backwards. So what do you say? And, Alonso we were talking about Alonso and making bad career choices earlier, and Alonso's recommitted to this team for the next 2 years as well. So, where they are at the moment, yeah, sure, hats off, they scored points, big whoop, but where they sit in the Constructors' Championship is really no man's land at the moment. They're Mercedes and McLaren and all that, they're more than 150 points ahead of them. And then if you look behind, RB are only 30 odd points behind them. So, do you think perhaps the likes of Haas and RB could possibly threaten them heading into the later part of the season? Or, they're just going to occupy that space that Alpine were in last year where, they were too far behind who was in front of them and, just enough ahead of the teams behind to stay clear, to be in the middle. But, to me, I guess, given the investment and every bit of noise that Lawrence Stroll makes about the team, it is disappointing to see them having regressed from where they were last year as being second best, or even potentially, what do you call it, in the top 3, top 4 teams, to essentially being nowhere. But I guess Lance Stroll gets some credit this weekend because he beat his teammate.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's I'm just massively whelmed by Aston Martin this season. So yeah, not really the team that it did make me laugh that Alonso was saying when he signed for Aston Martin, well, they're quicker than Mercedes. Why would I sign for Mercedes? And I can't see them. This Mercedes dominance of Formula One is ruining Formula One. That's 2 races in a row they've won now. So yeah, moving on then. So I'm just gonna so make sure I remember this week. I'm gonna get you guys to give yourself a bit of a promo whilst also asking you for your driver of the day. Now, the Grid Talk official driver of the day, unsurprisingly, was Lewis Hamilton. I believe it may have even been unanimous. So not even a cursory joke vote for Perez from me on this one. I genuinely went for Hamilton. So I'll start with you, Owain. Tell us a little bit more about where people can hear from you and give us your drive of the day as well.
You can hear from me on Twitter, but that's about it. I don't really tweet. What I would say is that it'd be good to have a listen to our Formula Talk episode about the British Grand Prix that I'm sure will be coming out. As honestly, it was absolutely brilliant in the sports series, at least in the F2 that I saw. Apparently Twitter doesn't exist anymore. It's called X. I'm not calling it that. That's ridiculous. I'm not bowing to the whims of someone who think X as a letter is cool. And has done for the last 20 years. But yeah, if you would like to hear a Formula Talk, you can hear the lovely tones of Sophia Richmond, who sort of goes through everything to do with the support series, and you can get that wherever you get Formula Talk. Wherever you get Grid Talk. I'm very flustered by that now. And my driver of the day is Lewis Hamilton. I see no reason not to give it to him. It's been a long time coming, and he managed a great race, as we know he can do. But the old dog still got it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, Alex, where can people hear more from you, and who was your driver today?
Well, currently on Facebook, I'm covering the 1994 Formula One season. It's 30 years ago since one of the most tragic and controversial seasons of all time. We're in mid-July now, so there's a lot of back-to-back races now, but back then it was quite rare. But we just had one. There was Magny-Cours last week, and this week will be Silverstone, which was a very infamous race. There was a famous formation lap infringement by a certain Michael Schumacher that proceeded to have massive consequences for the rest of that season. So I will be covering that this week. My driver of the day, it's got to be Lewis Hamilton, really. Superb drive from him. Honourable mention, though, to Max Verstappen in the face of adversity, still came away with second place, further extending his championship lead to a very healthy margin now. And also Nico Hülkenberg as well. I thought did a fantastic job after qualifying. He made a bad start, he dropped down, but still finished 6th in the Haas. But overall, it would have to be Lewis.
Yeah, it's a really good shout on Max Verstappen, actually. And apologies for butchering your name, but Sai Reguera in the chat did say Verstappen for driver of the day. I just wanted to shout that out, as it's actually a really solid shout. He he did, especially that final stint, was phenomenal. Pace wasn't there at the start, but a solid performance anyway. Jawad, your driver of the day, and a bit of self promo as well.
Yeah, I'll make it 3 from 3 and go with Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT of F1. Hard to go past him in this performance today, and just because it's been so long since we've seen him win a race. We were so used to him winning season on season, and it was difficult not to feel as emotional as he did, as a lot of our Grid Talk colleagues have been sharing on social media as well, their emotions about it. So yeah, Hamilton for driver of the day. And as for where you can find my work, a website called theraw.com.au. I write F1 articles, V8 supercars content, live blogs for the F1 races as well. And I'm sure I'll be writing something up about McLaren this week and how they've butchered the triple header and could have easily won a few more races at this point, and need to step it up if they really want to be considered world championship contenders, this year and in next year in terms of the constructors. So yeah.
Fantastic. Great content there as well. So definitely go and have a look at that. So Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most of our episodes are recorded live, and you can talk to us in the live chat. And we're going to be doing a post show like we are in a few minutes' time to discuss those questions you fire in. We're also available on Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Formula One Grid Talk for all our back catalogue of shows, where we've got previews, reactions, interviews, all kinds of stuff on there. Always worth having a look. Please consider supporting us on Patreon as well, as we can get better mics, lights, and recording equipment. And make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when each weekly episode is released. We will be back with plenty more F1 content fairly soon, as the next race is Hungary, isn't it? So I'm sure we'll be back with a preview for that in the next week or so. So thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you to the YouTube audience. And we will see you next time.
Recording stopped.
Yeah, I definitely forgot to press stop there, so that was all on me. Sorry, guys. Right, okay, so moving on to the post-show then. Firstly, should we discuss that that comment from Sai Reguera about Max Verstappen, driver of the day? What's your thoughts on that and his performance? Do you think it's that's a valid shout? I'll open it up. Whoever wants to talk about it.
Certainly a valid shout. I mean, considering that fifth, as we mentioned in the show, was looking like at best that was going to be the best result that they were going to hope for. But yeah, it showed. You don't win 3 championships on the bounce by finishing fifth. They all want to win, and had the race been a bit longer, he might have ended up winning it. Yeah, really good shout for driver of the day. But I know we're going to be accused of being biased, but it'd have been hard to look past Lewis, really, and also just the circumstances as well.
Well, they put the comment on saying no flaw, bad tyres, still probably would have won if there were 2 more laps. But then Jared Bradley has come back with the rebuttal of if there were 2 more laps, then Hamilton would have stopped the hards anyway. So I think that's fair.
Yeah,
it's a good argument to have, definitely. And I think maybe if there was, potentially would have gone for the hards. I still credit that to Sergio Perez for his first stint. I still think that's the reason why Max Verstappen was on the hard tyres at the end, because Perez had done the first stint on them and knew exactly what they were going to do. Yeah. Norris a bit, Jared Bradley, Norris. Sorry, have you got something to say, Jared?
I was just going to add that in the post-race interview, Max also credited the fact that they made the right calls, and they were every time on the right lap, they were on the right tyre. So again, that execution thing, him and his team work so well in harmony together. So it's always great when it all comes together that way. So, you can easily give him the shout of being driver of the day for stitching together a good race.
Yeah, no, I think certainly Red Bull have been and still are the team that are most operationally sharp. They just seem to be poised to win every opportunity. It's rare they're not in with a shout to win a race, even when they're not competitive. So I think that definitely that's credit to Red Bull on that. And when you've got a driver like Max Verstappen, that you just insert strategy here. Okay, I'll make that work. Very much like Michael Schumacher. We need 15 qualifying laps, Michael. Okay. Here you go, 15 pole laps. Still very impressed with Verstappen's drive. Norris is both unlucky and made a bad call. Yeah, I think we've covered off McLaren's just general.
One,
go on.
I was going to say, you see it in some of the. I mean, sometimes they get it wrong, and the team has the driver, then is going to complain. But I remember there's been radio calls I've seen across racing, which is, we're gonna give you these tires, do what you can with them. I think, sometimes sometimes the driver needs to be told. The driver shouldn't have to be thinking about, shouldn't be trying to make the calculation of, do I want new softs? Do I want new mediums? How's that going to work out? You've got a couple of hundred people, all working to work that out to tell you. They've got strategy software for it. The only thing that, and told on they'd use the mediums earlier on in the Grand Prix. If they said you can get another new set of mediums, we'll put that on the car. You'll have faster tires than you would otherwise by the end of the Grand Prix, and you'll start out with a softer compound than Max. I don't know why they didn't just say you're having mediums and that's it.
Bottom line is as well. Norris could easily have won the last 4 races, and if he had, the championship would have been looking rather interesting right now. I mean, Max is about 8. I think he's 83, 84 points ahead. He might
84, yeah,
84. It might have been 50. Had he won those 4 races and Verstappen was second and potentially
it would have been a
today.
7-point swing because Max has won those races, so it could be even closer than that.
Yeah,
he could genuinely be in. He could genuinely be in the shout for the championship now. He's only got Max can come second in every race and win the championship now comfortably. With Norris winning every race, and with this long left, that seems insane.
He needs a few retirements, doesn't he?
I mean, we've seen with George Russell retiring today, what that's done in the fight with Lewis Hamilton. And one thing we haven't actually spoken about on this show is Sergio Perez now in P6, but he's only 8 points away from Lewis Hamilton in P8. It's not inconceivable he could end up in what on balance would be the first or second best car all season and finishing 8th in the Constructors' Championship. That just seems insane.
Well, I've just read, I don't know how true this is, but apparently Red Bull are really urging him to improve before the summer break, because if they do, they could invoke an exit clause on his contract.
Well, he's got 2 races.
Yeah.
Which the clause suggests that he has to be within 100 points, I think, of Max, which, what's it at the moment, 137 points?
Hold on. So we're going to go to the Hungaro ring, which is a driver's track. It doesn't really suit his style. And then we're going to go to Spa, where I mean, you've got to take into account you raise the ride height there, and that it's already a very slim margin, but now we've got a scenario where let's say 3 teams have the ability to challenge the Red Bull, and I don't know. The Mercedes tends to usually go quite well in any guys at Hungary, and then obviously Spa, which really is a driver's circuit, and I can easily see him by the end of the summer break, by the start of the summer break, not being within 100. He's 16 points away. Hold on, it's not even 16 points. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, can you see him outscoring Max Verstappen by 20, 30 points between now with those 2 races? There's no way he's going to be within 100
I can't
points.
see him scoring. I've said this before, like last year. I can't see him scoring 20 or 30 points.
No, not at all.
I mean, that's it. I've got every race lined up here. So we've got P2, P2, P5, P2, P3, P4, new contract, P8, non-classified, P8, P7, P17. And it is just since these upgrades, it is literally since he signed the contract and the upgrades updates, because they might be rubbish, went on the car, he's just gone completely to pot. He was 2 laps down. He was 2 laps down on Max Verstappen. Now I know he got stitched on the strategy, and I've defended him a little bit in this race, but even so,
he's in marginally the fastest car on the grid.
Yeah. And you made the point, Tom, earlier that if it wasn't for his mistake in qualifying, he wouldn't be in that position in the first place. So it just goes back to that frustratingly that he keeps shooting himself in the foot on Saturday. And then, we know he's a decent racer and he can put together a result, but this is just Yeah, and I feel like I've got to question Red Bull on their decision making with, uh, the pool of drivers that they've got at the moment, because you talk about Daniel Ricciardo stepping in, and I take no offense to anyone slagging off about Ricciardo, because he's past it, but he's hardly an upgrade on Perez in my opinion if you put him in the Red Bull, and you're not going to throw Liam Lawson into the deep end straight away because we don't want another repeat of what happened to Pierre Gasly or Alex Albon. So what is RB doing, if they're not going to be a junior team? Or, you've got Yuki Tsunoda, but no one's interested in throwing him into the Red Bull either. So, they've kind of created this situation for themselves in a way, and now they're paying the price for it. And if they lose a Constructors' Championship as a result of it this year, then, that's on them.
I do like. I mean, I'll put it this way: like, I was watching the race with my partner, and even she pays a fair amount of attention. I'm working on her. With the Stockholm syndrome on that one for Formula One. But even she was like, yeah, So even she was just like, who does he know? Like, who does it like? What? Who is he? Who's he sleeping with? Because I can't like how vital is that money, or what does he know about somebody at Red Bull that they've continued to choose him? Because I don't, as much as you guys think that, as much as many people think that that Red Bull that Daniel Ricciardo is washed up and things like that, and that Liam Lawson wouldn't be able to, I can't see anyone from that doing a worse job, like from that sort of stable of drivers. I think honestly, if you put Daniel Ricciardo now in where he's at, I think he genuinely would do better. But I think he's got way better ability than Perez has, and he's way more suited to the car, which means more suited to his driving style. Like, I don't like it is plain and obvious to see that Perez has been useless, genuinely useless.
I tell you what, it's unfortunate for Red Bull because just nobody available that fits the profile. What they need is somebody with maybe like past links to the Red Bull program that's a proven race winner that's out of. Oh wait, Carlos Sainz! Just sign Carlos Sainz. Why are they playing that? Why? I've been saying this for months. Why? Sainz was available before Perez signed this contract. Why didn't they sign Carlos Sainz? He's the perfect driver for it.
Because the Verstappens are there and they wouldn't have it.
But why? Like, clearly Max Verstappen has come on leaps and bounds since 2015, and Sainz is obviously better, but Sainz was he is a much more rounded driver than he was in 2015, and Max Verstappen is a completely different class to what he was in 2015. They're not going to be close. He's clearly, I mean, if Leclerc I know there's only 4 points between him in the championship. I'm getting rather heated now. I know he's only 4 points between him in the championship, but that's
it'd be closer though, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's down to situations and bad luck and Ferrari being Ferrari. So and Sainz kind of bossing the strategy because he's not afraid to do that. So I don't see why they wouldn't go for him. Max Verstappen has said in interviews, I don't care who my partner is, I'll beat them anyway. When you've got that much self-confidence and belief in yourself, it doesn't matter who your partner is. If Lewis Hamilton came into Red Bull, he wouldn't care. Maybe his dad's a bit a little bit not wanting it, and Red Bull want an easy life. But sorry, your easy life is going to throw you away another Constructors' Championship. Perez has already cost them the 2021 Constructors' Championship, and I stand by that comment. I'm sorry, Alex, I know you like him, but I stand by that comment that he cost them the 2021 Constructors' Championship. If that had been Alex Albon in that car, they'd have won the Constructors. However, Hamilton would have won the Drivers because Albon would have been further ahead of Hamilton and not blocked him in several races. But let's not talk about 2021. That's a bad idea. Let's see what other questions are on it. Sorry, go on away.
I've just thought McLaren did this. In a similar, in a slightly different scenario, McLaren did this in 2008. They could have won that world championship with the constructors, and they had Heikki Kovalainen, who won a single Grand Prix in a championship-winning McLaren.
Yeah, that was a gift.
He was lucky. He genuinely, Heikki Kovalainen. I've said this for years now. Heikki Kovalainen was genuinely lucky that Fernando Alonso didn't gel at McLaren.
Yeah.
Still remember Ron Dennis's words on the radio. Welcome to the world of winning, Heikki. Welcome to the world of winning.
Yeah.
And he never got back in the club. He never. He was
Was
did a
it
whistle
Martin
stop
Brundle?
tour.
Sorry, go on.
I was. Oh no, I was just. I don't know. Talking.
Yeah, no, I just remember Martin Brundle saying, "Oh, and I think it was on this race." We said, "And when they win their first race, the second is not far away." Like, well, we're still waiting.
Yeah.
Like 16 years later or something.
It's the
Oh
same,
dear.
It's the same thing.
Oh, I apologize for my rant. Yeah, it's just Red Bull wanting an easy life and they're ruining it. Right. Okay. What else have we got on here? Okay. I don't get this. So please, somebody with more knowledge than me, explain it to me. Jared Bradley, this is talking about Hamilton, I believe. I'm reminded of an NFL stat that shows Super Bowl winning teams are almost always one of the previous year's semi-finalists. And from memory, a semi-finalist in 3 of the past 5 years. That is just jargon to me. Someone explain it to me.
Essentially, well, I mean, it's kind of hard to. Does anyone know NFL better than I do? Okay. So
I definitely don't.
So the way the Super Bowl is contested is that you have, because of the weird nature of American football, you've got this thing called the AFC, which is the American Football Conference, and then the NFC, which is the National Football Conference, and it's the merger of 2 competing American football leagues. And the way that it works essentially is that when you get to the postseason, which is the playoffs, they sort of, it's like 2 sides of the draw. It's like 2 sides of the draw in the Euros. So typically, to get to that point, you mostly play teams in your sort of conference, and you don't play the other side of the league for the most part. And to be a semi-finalist, you get to the what is it? The champion, basically the championship game, and the 2 championship games determine who goes into the final. Being the Super Bowl. So essentially you have to kind of make it, you have to almost fail first. You have to find sort of every other way to lose before you can win. It's the same with Toyota with the curse at Le Mans. The way that they put it was that they had to find every single way to lose first, and still be in a shout. And then, once you clean up every other operational error that you've made, obviously, that I think that's you can that's when you finally sort of make good on it and beat everyone else. I think that's what Jared's getting at. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's. But yeah, you have to kind of get comfortable being in. Oh, I mean, the second comment. So management of the high stress environment of when a win is on the line is a huge decider in elite sports. It's that you have to. Yeah, you have to.
That makes sense.
Kind of get used to you have to kind of find the ways to lose first.
Right. So thank you for listening to the NFL Grid Talk podcast. What do we dressing room talk? I don't know. Yeah, so I think we'll probably wrap up now, but I'll just end by saying thank you again to the panelists. And Jared, for not wearing your McLaren shirt, I definitely blame you for Lando Norris not winning this race. Thanks a lot to everyone, and Aidan as well. I really appreciate your help on that. And we'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.